This Anonymous T. Hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Today I'm going to be reviewing Ready to Love Season 5, Episode 10, True Colors. And boy, were the true colors shown and exposed, and we've even went ratchet with some people. OMG. So the first part of the episode picks up where we left off last week, where the bottom two were Bilal and Cornelius, and for some reason they had Zadia and Camille be the ones to tell either one of them whether or not they were eliminated. To be honest with you, both of them should have just left because we don't need to see them anymore, nor do we need to see the toxicity from the quote-unquote brown girl squad. So I was just over it. I couldn't tell at first between Camille's tears if they were real or if they were fake, if she was acting and having a meltdown of almost having to eliminate Cornelius, because you never know with this lady. But sure enough, the gods have spoken, the Ready to Love gods have spoken, and we have Cornelius gone, and I could not be more ecstatic. And then Cornelius, it looked like he felt relieved that, you know, he was being eliminated, and then kind of had a dig that he wished he would have had an opportunity to have some connections with some of the other ladies. But I'm sorry, like, you had that opportunity. You put all of your eggs into Camille. You were afraid to tell her the truth. You were afraid to hurt your feelings. You never manned up and tried to get to know any of the other ladies besides Courtney, and that flopped. And you never tried to open up to anybody else, even when you were in the bottom previously and talking to Zadia about it. So I don't know. I felt a certain way because I'm like, Cornelius, you definitely could have got to know more ladies if you wanted to. I saw some rumors that Cornelius and Camille were already a couple before the show started. And if that is the case, that would explain so much, that they were just trying to get an additional 15 minutes of fame and trying to get an additional check. I hope that rumor isn't true because it defeats the whole purpose of doing this show. So I hope that is just rumors and hearsay, and that is not fact. So then, you know, Cornelius is thinking he's free in the clear. He's going to leave on his own. And no. Camille is like, well, you know, since I don't have any other connections here and I think what we have is real, I'm going to go with you. And Cornelius is like, what? And I was like, see, I'm like, she's attached to you for life. And she's still talking about marriage and kids and the whole nine. And Cornelius is like, yeah, one day at a time. And it's just hilarious because if you'll remember at the beginning of the last episode, it was Zadia who rode in the back with the mask on up to this retreat with Cornelius and Camille. And now she doesn't have a ride. So she's going to need to Uber herself out of this retreat whenever it's time to go. Next, we get into Phil and Shiloh, and they just went from scorching hot to not. I honestly think Phil liked Shiloh more when she had multiple options, but now essentially that he is her only option, he's no longer interested. And now he's interested in Sydney as well, who her primary is also Frank. So I think Phil turned on the charm when Tyrone was in the picture, and it was a risk for Phil of potentially being eliminated. And now that Shiloh has no other connections, it's him or she goes home. I think now Phil is no longer interested, because how can you be close all this time and you still will not give her a kiss? You still won't be affectionate. So they were playing this game in the kitchen, trying to get to know each other, what each other's biggest fears are. And Shiloh, she's doing all of this open up to Phil, and Phil is doing all of this closing up. And it's like, girl, do you not see? He doesn't see it for you. Girl, you should have stuck with Tyrone. He was the real one. And now you put your hooks into, Mr. Phil, and now Phil is no longer feeling you. So it is what it is. Those days are numbered. I don't see them making it to the end. I just don't. I do not see it happening at all. Next, we get into Mr. Dante and Miss Aisha. They have a little bit of a, catch up slash, the day after, the night after, follow up of kind of everything that took place between them with MassageGate. And, essentially Dante is telling Aisha he's feeling her, this and that. This is good for Aisha because now, at the beginning we saw her with multiple connections, but now it looks like this might be her only connection. So this is what she needs to make sure she is not on the bottom in any capacity. And I think her and Dante are going to, push through and be potentially one of the final couples when it's all said and done, because the show is almost over. So that's the case with that. And it might work out because each of them both have 3 kids, and it might be a situation where it might work out because neither one, I don't think, wants any more kids. So therefore it might be a match made in blended family heaven. Who knows? Next, we move forward with Frank and Moomin, and he's doing like some cheap little date. I don't know why they call some of these things date. Like Dante called his thing with Aisha a date, and it was just them sitting on, some chairs outside with a glass of wine. Like, that's not a date. And then Frank is up here saying that he took Moomin out on a date over by, the national park. And I don't find that to be a date. Because they just like walked around for a little bit. And then he gave her a golf ball that he stole from the putt-putt place and wrote her name on marker. And they're like eating applesauce and stuff. Like it was just so low budget. It was just no effort put in. And I don't know why Moomin is wasting her time with Frank. None of the guys there really are on Moomin's level that are worth, even sticking around for. But it seems up until this point that Frank is really all she has after all of the drama with Walter, that I think some of it could have been hashed out had Moomin and Walter had a serious conversation. But I just think things went left, and I think she felt a certain way about Sabrina, and she shouldn't have let her own personal feelings about Sabrina get in the way of what her and Walter were trying to build. And unfortunately, that's what took place. So Moomin basically tells Frank she's all in with him, and that's that, so we'll see what happens with them. We'll see if they make it to the end, or if Frank dumps her and goes full speed ahead with Sydney. So I guess more to come on that. Then next, we go into a date with Dante and Zadia. And I don't know if Zadia thought this was the elimination date, but she came in hot and, basically was coming for Dante and saying that, she was mad at him for ignoring her at the retreat, even though in reality, Zadia never paid Dante no mind until Dante started liking Aisha. And that's really the actual facts. Zadia was all over Bilal the whole time. She couldn't care less what Dante was doing until Dante basically was at Aisha's side and started feeling Aisha, and that's, of course, Zadia's arch nemesis. So that is really the issue that she has. And she's up here talking about she was uncovered and she was unprotected. And it's like, you were up under Bilal the whole trip. What are you talking about? And then you're bragging on social media that he ran you, you guys were doing something in the hot tub. Like, what are you talking about? You felt uncovered and unprotected. What? And so she's trying to say that, they didn't communicate well and this and that. And it's like, Dante is doing him. He's trying to ensure that he has the right connections moving forward. And if Zadia is not giving him the attention, if she's ignoring him for an entire weekend, what is he supposed to do with that? And so then Zadia is trying to then come for the deliberations that the men have and trying to basically say that she needs to be defended. And it was so random because it was like, that's not how this goes. Like, you can't predict what the men are going to disclose because each of the men have different connections and each of the men are going to say something different and have a different perspective on the ladies. So you can't just come in and be like, hey, I need you to make sure I don't get eliminated when it's your fault for your behavior and your actions that puts you on the chopping block. Like, what is Dante supposed to do? And so then she's all mad and she's all calling out, the fact that he planned massages and was cooking with Aisha. And she's just like very mad. She is very bitter. And, Dante's like, listen, you looked like you were all in with Bailao, so there was no point for me playing second fiddle, playing second best, playing dude on the side if you are not paying me any attention. And it was just weird how Zadia tried so hard to manipulate and gaslight this conversation as if she wasn't up under Bailao the whole weekend. I was like, did you completely miss what happened? And I just think it's just one of those things that she feels a way that Dante chose Aisha over her. And I think that's all really the bottom line is. She is insecure for whatever reason over Aisha, and that is what this is stemming from. So the end of this conversation, Zadia kind of grabs his beard a little bit and then walks away. And then the camera follows her to the elevators while, Dante is trying to enjoy his meal. He's trying to eat, his risotto, have a glass of wine, this and that. So he thinks this is done and he could just enjoy his dinner. And then out of nowhere, the camera comes back to Zadia and it shows her in the, in the midst, in the abyss, coming back to this madness to have another conversation with Dante. And I'm like, this is not going to go well. This is not going to end well, because what was the point? I don't know if Camille called her. I don't know if production called her. But I don't know what made her think that she needed to go back and have a further conversation with somebody who basically told her she chose another man over him. Therefore, he chose who he wanted to choose. And then Zadia, she came back and it just broke loose. She is in this man's face. She is talking out the side of her neck. She has her voice raised, saying she would never roll up on him and saying that he showed his true colors and just doing the most. And Dante is trying to keep it cool. Like you said it, you said your piece. She's calling him a fraud. She's calling him fake, this and that. And it's just too much. And then she's got her finger on his nose. She's got her hand in this man's face. And I'm like, what are you doing? It is not that serious. And you don't even like Dante like that. And you're carrying on like this. I was just so disgusted. I'm like, why is your finger on this man's nose like that? What are you doing? It was just too much. It was just absolutely too much. And I just could not believe it. She really tried it. She absolutely tried it. And it was hood. It was ratchet. It was inappropriate. You don't need to be putting your fingers on no man's face. It's not that serious. Come on. And calling him a fraud and calling him fake and all that. It was just too much. It was just too much. It was just too much ridiculousness. And I was just done with Zadia at that point. I was just completely done. Because I'm like, first we had Camille's antics, and then her and, Zadia became the Brown Girl Squad, and then it just went to just complete and utter chaos. And now all of a sudden you can't handle conflict, you can't handle an argument, and you're putting your hands in somebody's face? Oh, no. So Dante went back to his risotto, which I'm sure at that point was probably cold after, Zadia's little performance. Next thing we have is a date with Walter and Sabrina. And pretty much this is Walter's only connection and Sabrina's only connection yet. And I just, I think that they're probably just going to be, one of the final couples, it seems. But it just seems as though Walter never really was into Moomin, I don't think, as he claimed to be. He was always into Sabrina, no matter what he says. And, and that's on that. And so they basically got to eat. He brings her flowers and, she's hyping up the fact that they're both wearing black. Ooh. So hard to, decide on what to wear. But, she's excited about that. They're talking about their connection and how it's an easy decision to just be all in with each other. And then she's making sexual jokes, sexual innuendos, and this and that. And, Walter, it's so funny because he keeps bringing up this thing about Sabrina being a stripper. But I'm like, did you not see who your ex was with the Coco from SWV nails that she had? What is your issue, man? And if it was such a big issue with Sabrina being a stripper for 10 years, why are you still entertaining her? Really, that's the bottom line. If it really bothers you that much. Because I don't think it really bothers Walter. I just think it bothers him that it's going to be public and that it's going to be on national TV for everybody to see. That's what I think he really feels a way about. Not that Sabrina was formerly a stripper. So, because when he then tried to allude to her being a madam and some other stuff, and I'm like, no, I think he definitely is happy that she used to be a stripper. It is written all over his face. He just doesn't want it out there for the cameras. So that was on that. So enough of that date. We then move forward over to Miss Sydney and Mr. Phil, and oh my goodness, were these sparks flying. I was feeling the vibes. I was feeling the chemistry. I was just feeling the lust. I felt that I was intruding on something private. Like, they were just very much in sync. Sydney had on this dress to kill. She was not playing. She knew exactly what she was doing. If you'll recall, we didn't see Sydney and Phil for a while. The only other time we saw them was when they did that workout date where there wasn't much working out happening. And then we kind of never really saw their connection because it was pretty much all in between, Phil and Shiloh and Phil and everybody else, than it was of us seeing this connection. And so this is the first time that we actually saw Phil open up and, open up about different things and, how his mom passed away and different, like, really just vulnerable and everything else. And he has not been that way with Shiloh or any of these other ladies. So I was really surprised. Now, while I will say a big part of this is probably lust and the fact that he knows that Frank is, for now her number one. But I do think Phil genuinely feels a certain way about Sydney. And I feel like there's something about Shiloh that has Phil concerned about, but he's afraid to say it. So I feel like whatever that concern is, he has now completely hitched his wagon onto Sydney and is just waiting for Sydney to say, he's the only one that she wants. So, they're talking. Sydney, she's happy. She's bubbly. She is like, they're flirting. They're getting into some deep conversation. And like I said, the vibes, the energy, the chemistry was just completely there. I liked it. I was feeling it. Then Sydney says, do you want to wet your whistle? And then Phil kisses his first lady, which is Miss Sydney. And then he's like kissing on her wrist, kissing on her hand. And I was like, ooh-wee. And it was just hot. It was a lot happening. And I was like, whoa, buddy. Like, this is insane. Because Phil was never this affectionate, hasn't kissed any of the other ladies since being there this whole time. Even Shiloh, he hasn't even kissed. And she's tried to actually kiss him, and he curved her. He turned his head to the side. So, again, I am rooting for Phil and Sydney, even though it looks kind of out of nowhere, but that I blame production on for not showing us their connection. Because I feel like Sydney appeared and then she disappeared for a few episodes. So I'm here for it. I like her and Phil. I like the vibes. I like their connection. I think they make a striking couple and they seem to have, great energy off of each other. And it seems to be really great. So I'm hoping it works out for them. I really do. I'm hoping they're one of the final couples. So that's on that. Next, we then get to the males' deliberation with nephew Tommy, so the men can kind of discuss everything that's happened this week and, get some feedback on what happened with the retreat. So Frank gets right into the tea that the women, specifically Aisha, Zadia, and Camille, got into it. Frank exposes the Brown Girl Squad alliance, and, nephew Tommy interjects in terms of, what are you mean you're the brown girl group, and what does that look like to everybody else that's not included or to people who are light skinned? And if you'll remember, the same conversation happened a couple of seasons ago with, Denise when she made the light skin comments about Rashid and him being in a fraternity. So it's just like, once again, we are addressing, these comments, and there's no need to identify yourself as the brown girl squad. There's just no need, because if there was a light skin squad or the red bone squad, there would be so much backlash. There would be so much colorism comments and people getting dragged on the show. So it's just, and I think that alone, I felt that alliance was made for Camille and Zadia to put themselves above the other ladies that were among the journey. However, The two of them ended up being the messiest and being the most uncouth and being the most inappropriate and unprofessional and, just very disturbing on this show. So after they kind of reveal, Frank basically spills the tea, basically outs everybody's girls. I saw his strategy. He was low-key trying to throw shade on everybody else's girls, with the exception of his connections with Sydney and Moomin. So I definitely saw the game that Frank was playing, and he just got right after it. Frank, of course, talks about his connections, that he has connections with both Moomin and Sydney. Then, of course, Walter talks about his connection with Sabrina. Then, also, Dante, he talks about his connection with Aisha and how that's progressed. Bailao talks about his connection with Nadia. And Phil, of course, talks about, how things with Shiloh, she's been consistent from the beginning, but now things are starting to heat up with him and Sydney. And so now he's, kind of torn. And it was funny because when Frank was describing his connection with Sydney, Phil kind of looked at him a certain way. And it was funny because it looked like from the way the camera was panned that he was looking directly at Frank when trying to describe his connection with Sydney, to let him know, like, this is something that could be legit. This is something you better watch out, partner. Like, he was just giving me that energy, and it was so freaking hilarious. So then from there, they go into, obviously, who they felt they weren't ready to love as far as who the ladies and who should be going home. And it was weird because it was like, everybody kind of had a few different people that I was surprised about. I was surprised that Sabrina didn't get more votes because I thought if you didn't have other connections, that made you vulnerable. But it seems as though it picks and chooses, I guess, who that applies to. Because, Walter is Sabrina's only connection. But it was weird because this is what the ladies were arguing about, essentially, about some people not wanting to narrow down their connections, or some people thinking that they had this show in the bag to get to the end because they only had one connection. And so, finally we get around to Dante, who, basically puts, Zadia on notice. And Bailao is just like doubling down. And he's like, well, she's never been that way with me. And it's like, what? How many more times do you have to see Zadia in these various incidents with people, getting into all these arguments, trying to gaslight different people, putting fingers in people's faces? Like, what more examples do you need to see that this person is not somebody that you need to be looking at for a serious committed relationship, nor do you need to be looking at her as somebody who is quote unquote ready to love? And so then, as a response to that, Bailao had got Phil and Frank back talking about Sydney, of all people, saying he couldn't stand her voice. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like, this is what we're doing? This is what we're doing. All right. And so then Walter's being petty. He's trying to take out Moomin because of everything that happened with, their disconnect at the retreat. So that is what that is. So Frank feels a certain way. He's hearing Moomin's name floating around through a few different people. And I don't blame him. I'm like, Moomin going home over Zadia would be a disaster. Sabrina going home over Moomin, or not Sabrina going home over Moomin, Sabrina going home over Zadia, a disaster. So I don't even know why Moomin is, circling around. I don't know if it was just strategy on Walter's part because he was mad that things didn't work out and that he still couldn't, have both women involved in the process with him. And, Moomin said, forget it, and just put all her focus into Frank. So the bottom two, believe it or not, I was shocked myself. I thought for sure either Shiloh or Sabrina would be in the bottom two along with Zadia. And lo and behold, it's Moomin. Moomin and Zadia are the bottom two out of nowhere. And guess who brings Moomin to her potential elimination date? Mr. Walter himself, who just threw her under the bus right before. It's like you can't make this up. And then, the camera pans to Zadia because obviously she's in the bottom two. and she basically put on this biker outfit, this biker leather number, and she talked about this was one of the baddest outfits she had, and I was like, girl, you need to check your closet again, because this was not it. This whole biker getup was just not the business that you thought it was, and it was just hilarious, because I just wasn't sure if she was just doing this on purpose to be funny, because anybody with the brain cell would have known that this is not your week, boo-boo. Like, there is no way you're putting somebody's hand in their face and you're still going to stay on the show. She has to know that she is on the chopping block. She has to know that she is at risk for getting eliminated for her behavior, specifically with Dante this week. And, you know, there's no excuse for that. There was no need for her to react like that. I don't know if she did it on purpose, if she purposely wants to be off the show at this point, since her partner in crime, Camille, is no longer there. I don't know what her motivation was. I don't know what her motives were for doing this. But essentially, the camera, of course, pans back and forth to both of these dates. Walter and Moomin, they're having a whole long, drag-out, hash-out type of session to where Moomin is just letting it let have. She does not care, about this conversation. She no longer cares about Walter. And, Walter keeps threatening in the confessional, oh, Moomin, you're eliminating yourself. But it's like, come on now. Moomin's one of the sweetest ladies that are left in this process. You're really going to eliminate her over Zadia? Like, is this what we're really doing? Are you really that pressed that things didn't work out with you and Moomin that you would eliminate her over Zadia? Like, come on now. Come on, Walter. Come on now. So then the camera goes back to Phil, and, they're getting around to what the men deliberated about. They're getting around to the incident that happened with Dante, trying to get, Zadia's side. Phil is, to kind of get her perspective, to see if she felt remorseful, to see if she was apologetic, to see if she felt that she crossed the line and she went too far in trying to, quote unquote, set things straight with Dante. So, and pretty much she basically said that it was one of those moments that she didn't, pump the brake and kept accelerating and this and that. And so Phil basically was like, I can't co-sign any of that type of behavior. So, and there it is. And then we go back to Moomin and Walter. They're talking still about the retreat, and they're still talking about the piano incident where Walter and Sabrina, they're sitting close to the piano, and that was when Moomin walks in, because, Moomin is a gospel singer, and, his energy was kind of closed off to her, and, Moomin felt a certain way about that. And so they're going back and forth on the dynamics and the details of that whole interaction, and it is what it is. So then from there, we pan back to Phil and Miss Zadia. So obviously she feels at this point that, Dante exaggerated what happened. Dante exaggerated and calling her aggressive. Dante exaggerated and used some choice adjectives to describe her. So therefore, no man wants to deal with her at this point. So she feels that she was thrown under the bus, essentially. But you just basically cussed out Dante earlier in the week because you said you felt uncovered and unprotected by him. So why would he go to bat for you, especially if you put your finger in his face? Like, what sense would that make? And then the flip of it all, like I said at the beginning of the video, you chose Bilal over Dante anyway, so why are you so pressed over this man? It was just too much. And I still feel a way that she called Aisha dumb. Like, it was just completely out of bounds. And I hope Aisha gets Zadia together at the reunion, because her and Camille have been so reckless with their mouths and insulting these other ladies, and it has gone unchecked for way too long. Way too long at all. This whole Mean Girls attitude, this whole Brown Girl Squad attitude, like, it just needs to stop it. Like, get it together. Get over yourself. And don't be on Instagram complaining about your edit either, because you definitely had that smoke on the show. And you're definitely gaslighting fans by still poking the bear on Instagram, trying to pretend that you're this great person, but then still putting out messy content on your channels. Like, let's stop it. So Then at that point, Moomin orders something. I don't even know what she ordered. And neither does she, and neither does Walter. And so then we go back to Zadia and Phil. And, Phil's all like, some people are great, but everybody has, flaws about them and different situations happen. And, I'm always going to hold you down. I'm always going to be there for you. However, this is something I can't co-sign. And so then, just as Phil is about to say, you are not ready to love, Zadia says it for him. I'm like, why are you taking the man's line like that? Like, this is the whole thing that, he was there for, and you're trying to take the shine. Like, it wasn't that serious. So Phil's obviously relieved. It is the end of the episode. I'm thinking, okay, boom, we are getting into previews for next week. Next thing I know, I'm seeing more footage of the skyline. I'm seeing lights. I'm seeing all this other stuff. And then out of nowhere, here comes Bailao in his... Here comes Bailao. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? What are we doing? So he meets nephew Tommy, looks like on this type of rooftop, and basically is trying to discuss, how does he move forward, that basically Zadia was his only connection at this point, and he doesn't know whether or not he can put his all into other females at this point, since he solely was just there for Zadia. So he doesn't know if he can continue the process or not. And he wanted to get nephew Tommy's thoughts, get his opinion on the matter to see if he should stay, if he should try to pursue other women, since he put all of his eggs in one basket with Zadia, or if he should move forward and, just cut his losses and just try to pursue things with Zadia off camera. And so basically, Tommy was trying to encourage Bailao to stay. He was trying to encourage the fact, like, hey, multiple men have had some issues with Zadia. And he did have a point when he said, why was Zadia so pressed over Dante if allegedly Bailao is supposed to be her top pick? But essentially, with how Zadia has been reacting this week to Dante, it looks like from the outside looking in that Dante really was her number one pick, or something progressed further with Dante than what she wants to let on and say on camera. And therefore, she thought she still was always going to have Dante around no matter what, no matter even if she ignored him, which she did. She thought she was still going to have him. And then once he chose Aisha, then World War III broke out. So, but yeah, Tommy was just trying to, tell him game that, like, if a woman's reacting like that to another man, like, why should you then cut your loss and go chase her? Like, she's already showing you, basically who she's trying to fight for, like, literally. So that was in itself. So even with all the convincing nephew Tommy attempted to do with Bailao, it seemed like he was pretty, sure in his decision at this point. And this just looked like a fluff scene at this point because, this just makes it easier for Bailao to do what he wanted to do, which is what his ex alluded to from the first place. And it's not to be ready for love. I can tell you that. So this just made the process easier for Bailao to get what he wants from Zadia and not have to deal with the pressures of the show and this and that and, fake it or do all this other stuff a little bit longer. Then we get into the previews for the next episode, and it looks completely messy because now the singles are going to introduce the people that they are coupled up with to their relatives, and it's already a hot mess express that I expected. In the previews, we see, Moomin and her family, and her dad is not happy, that Frank has another connection. He looks like he's about to set it off at the restaurant. He is not here for hearing that, his daughter might be two-timed or might be played by somebody because of this other connection. So he is not here for any of it. His look on his face said, like, we could just end this journey right now because you're not about to have my daughter looking crazy. And Then, of course, we then see from there also that happened in the previews was also Dante and, Aisha, because, of course, they're discussing, obviously Dante having 3 kids by 3 different women is a potential red flag for some women. So that obviously came up as a topic of conversation. And then there was some type of Keisha Cole moment that was happening with Shiloh and Phil. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if somebody had like a mental break, if somebody like popped off, if something just went completely left. Like, I have no idea what took place, but it was serious enough for, Shiloh and Phil to have a conversation with nephew Tommy. So I'm hoping that nothing, severe happened, and maybe it was an attempt to maybe break things off and things maybe just went left or whatever. I don't know. But Shiloh was just giving me Keisha Cole energy, like she was about to, let have with Phil. So I have no idea what's about to happen with that. Hopefully Phil's still on the show, and hopefully he still can pursue his connection with Cindy. But I had a feeling, this was not going to end well one way or the other, just because of how towards the end of the process, how, Phil started to really take a step back from Shiloh. And I don't think Shiloh noticed. I think Shiloh was too much involved, too much all in on the Phil sweepstakes to notice that Phil actually was pulling back from before, and he wasn't, as engaged with her as he was before. He wasn't as interested in her as he was before. And I think had Shiloh paid attention to that, instead of kind of letting her feelings overtake everything, I think she would have saw that, he no longer saw it for her as a potential relationship or whatever, or ready to love or whatever. So I have a feeling, whatever's going to happen next week is going to be explosive. I really hope Phil's not eliminated, because next week, of course, is the male week. So I do wonder who is going to be vulnerable in that situation, because now we're just down to, Frank, Walter, Dante, and Phil, and who am I forgetting? Who am I forgetting? Dante, Phil, Walter, Frank. Is that it? Is that all the guys? Am I going crazy? Is that it? Who am I forgetting? Is that it? Is it just, are we at a final 4? Is that everybody that's left? I'm trying to run through the scenarios, and I want to say that is it. That is all of them, I think. Pretty sure that's all of them. So, wow. Because I can't even believe it's the 10th episode. Because, I just feel like the season has just dragged on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So I am glad that we are finally getting towards the end. We're finally going to be getting towards the reunion and everything else. So hopefully, and then I saw allegedly the show might not be coming back till New Year's, which I think is a huge mistake. I don't know why they can't air the show next Friday. Like, what do we have to do? It's Christmas Eve. Like, come on now. Like, we'll be with our families and whatnot, but it's not like we can't interact and watch the show and enjoy, something good or whatever. Like, that's crazy. So that is what it is. So we'll just, I guess, play it by ear and see what happens with that. And, yeah, who do you guys think will make it to the end? I think now the final couple should be Sabrina and Walter. It should be Sydney and Phil. And it should be Dante and Aisha. And potentially Frank and Moomin. So that should be what the ending result should be. But who knows? With this show, I have no idea where they're going to go. I don't know if next week is going to be an elimination or the following week or whatever. All I know is I was just happy that the 2 toxic couples of Camille and Cornelius, as well as Bilal and Zadia are finally gone. They're finally off the show. So now we can actually just watch and actually see, real people with real connections and see whether or not what happens and kind of go from there. So those are all of the thoughts that I have. Who do you guys think will be the final couples? What did you guys think of this episode? Did you think finally the show has just gotten too ratchet, gotten too messy, gotten too ghetto, and out of pocket this episode? What are you guys' thoughts on that? What do you guys think on that? Because it was just too much. I was so disgusted by the behaviors of Camila and Zadia. Like, I just couldn't anymore. And I just didn't know if everything after what happened last week as well as this week, if they still both were on the show, it was just going to create World War III. Like, it was just going to be too much. Like, it was going to be absolutely too much. So I am glad that toxicity is no longer on the show. And I already know it's going to be a hot mess express at the reunion when they are back. So it is what it is. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys anticipate happening towards the end as far as, what you think is going to happen. Allegedly, they're filming another season in DC for some reason. I don't like this format of filming 2 seasons in a row in the same city. I think it's a disaster. And I think it's like they try to improve from the first season that was in there, and then it just gets worse. I still concur that the first 2 seasons that were in Atlanta were the best seasons of this show before it went off the rails. I get that, nephew Tommy wanted to do like a passion project in Houston, but it didn't need 2 seasons in Houston. We don't need 2 seasons in DC. I think pretty much every other season should always just be in Atlanta and forget it. And then you can, venture out to different cities and do different markets that feature a lot of Black people in that metro area, and then just come back to Atlanta the following season. I think if that's the direction they want to go as far as going to different cities, I think they should still make Atlanta the home base for the show, and then just go to different locations that, like I said, are going to be predominantly Black areas. So like maybe have like a series in Chicago one season, just some different ideas, and go from there. Another season maybe in North Carolina, just some different ideas. Another season in Philly, but then just have every other still be Atlanta. Because I think Atlanta really thus far has produced the best overall cast, I would say. Specifically in season 1, I felt it was the most mature cast. I felt, the ladies really got along pretty well, and the ladies didn't step on each other's toes. The ladies, even if they both liked the same gentleman, they, knew when it was time to remove themselves from the situation and wasn't trying to argue and go back and forth over a guy. And I do like the format now where it's a little bit more even in terms of who the eliminations are and how they go. But I just still feel that the women ultimately are fighting for the men, and that's not okay. I feel there's a couple men this season who are at least stepping up, who are at least, going to check on the women, who are actively pursuing the women. But I feel overall, a lot of the men were a lot more intentional the first couple of seasons compared to now. So that is what I think. Again, let me know what your thoughts are. If this is your first time at my channel, welcome. I am so glad you are here. I hope you come back again. And please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification button so you can be alerted anytime I post new content. And as always, I hope I talk to you guys again very soon.